Hi everyone, and welcome to the Thorogood webcast on driving insights from syndicated and other external data sources. My name is Liz McCreesh. I'm a principal consultant here at Thorogood Associates with over 20 years experience of working in the analytics and business intelligence area. As we look to get started, let's just quickly go through today's agenda. So first, we'll give a bit of an introduction to Thorogood and talk a little bit about our experience in BI and analytics and who we work with. We'll talk a bit about some examples of external data you may have within your company and some of the challenges you may be facing. We'll show how automating the process of aligning your data can reduce the pain points. And finally, I'll demonstrate how, having gotten your data to a good place, how you can automate getting insights from the data to save time running different types of analyses. So for those of you who aren't familiar with Thorogood, we're an independent global professional services firm specializing in business intelligence and analytics. We cover strategies, solutions, and services, and we have a very keen focus on our customers. We've got offices in New York, Philadelphia, Bangalore, Singapore, Sao Paulo, and I'm based out of our London office. We offer a full range of BI and analytics services, including strategy and roadmaps, requirements, design, implementation, training, and support. In terms of the technologies that we work with, as we are independent, we don't just work with one vendor. We do, however, work and partner with many of the key players in our market in order to provide our clients with the solutions that best suit their needs. So let's talk about external data then. So here we've got some examples of data providers. The first two we've got here are generally around the consumer packaged good industries. So IRI, Kantar, and Nielsen provide consolidated data by category that allows you to analyze your sales and those of your competitors. And generally the data is provided either kind of point of sale data based on retail audits or panel data. Some of our customers in the financial services and insurance industries use data from companies like Experian and Dun & Bradstreet to manage the commercial risk of their suppliers and portfolio. And in addition, data providers like BitSight allow you to monitor the cybersecurity of the websites of your customers and suppliers. And in the pharmaceutical industry, data on things like prescriptions written in surgeries and hospitals can be provided by firms such as IQVIA and Viva, as well as other practice data made available by the NHS. So each of these data providers can provide the data to you in a variety of user interfaces or flat files or transfer via FTP. The cost of acquiring that data does vary depending on both the level of interface you're using, but also the level of granularity of the data that you're willing to purchase. So while you can gain insights from analyzing some of these external data sets in isolation, the real insights can be gained when you combine that either with your own internal data or other external data sources. I'm just going to take you through a very simple example of how we can link the data together. So here I've got some internal customer master data, and I want to extend my ability to analyze my information by adding some external data. So I might get some data from Dun & Bradstreet, Experian, and BitSight. So the first thing I need to work out is how do I actually link the data together. So for Experian, we see we've got the company name here, but there is some slight deviation in spelling. So one way to get around that is to set up some synonyms where we take some common words like limited and we take the abbreviations and ensure that they're treated the same way in terms of mappings. Here we might actually use something like fuzzy lookup, so we could combine those three fields together, use a fuzzy lookup and have a confidence level that would ensure that we're happy that the data is matching. And here we've got the email of our contact, so we'll just take the right-hand side of that and use that to map to our domain to do our cyber rating for BitSight. So that example might seem very simple, but imagine you've got thousands of customers that you need to run this process through. So there's quite a few things you need to consider. So what are the common synonyms you should set up? If it's a global system, is all your data in English? Do you need to do some translations beforehand? What do you do if there's no match? Do you have some interim process, or do you just put it all against unknown? And depending on what the data is you're loading, you may have different answers for that question. What do you do if you've got multiple possible matches? You might need to consider attributes of your data that you can combine together to make sure you're choosing the most appropriate level. And then if you do decide that you do need a manual process to do that mapping, you need to think about how sophisticated that user interface needs to be and what the checks and balances would need to be for that as well. If you're running an algorithm and there's confidence level, you need to work out as well, at what point do you think you're happy to not have to check the data after running it through a few times? And maybe it's only a bit less than 85, where the confidence level is below a certain threshold. that you would actually think, well, actually we'll go in here and do that manual process. So far we've just looked at a very simple mapping example with customer, which just is one level. What do you do if you've got a product hierarchy with multiple levels? So that's something you need to think about, the granularity of your data. Do you allocate everything down to the lowest level, or do you take the common point of least resistance and just take everything at the most common level, accepting that you will lose some granularity from some of your data sources? Data may arrive on different schedules. For example, one provider may deliver data weekly, another monthly. Therefore, you can get some data misalignment. So what do you do in that case? Do you hide data where you don't have a full set and possibly lose visibility of the latest period where it's more detailed? Or do you extrapolate out weekly data so you've got a full set to work with? Still talking about the time considerations. So some data will provide it on different time bases. You might get some at a month level and some at a week level. So how do you handle that? Do you simply allocate down to the day and then ramp it back up again? Or do you do something much more sophisticated and have a weighted logic to account for things like seasonality and weekend sales? Possibly should have been number one on the list here, but data quality is always a challenge that needs to be handled when we're loading data into systems. You need to be able to anticipate the kinds of issues that you may come across, build in appropriate checks to make sure you're loading accurate information, but also make sure you've got some data quality reports that will flag if there's any mappings that are missing or any anomalies with your data. The other aspect is kind of making sure you've got the same definitions and methods that you're using. It could be as simple as being clear on what the units of measure. So if it's just coming in volume, is that volume in litres, volume in cases? Make sure you're talking apples and apples. And what do you do if data comes in that's non-additive? So it may well be, do you think how you can actually report that data at various levels? Restatement of history is another aspect to consider. So quite often what happens is we'll get data and it will be rejigging of the market. They'll change some of the structures, and they might even change codes within the system, in which case you tend to get a full set of the data for the last X number of periods, every period. So what that means is you basically ditch your old data and add the new ones, or if you keep some of the historical data as it rolls off, you do need to be very aware that you might get some restatement issues and being able to not be aligning the data together. So further considerations also need to be made when you want to align your internal data and external data. So you need to think about how you're going to do those mappings to your internal corporate dimensions. As we mentioned earlier, the idea if you've got allocations of data, so if you've got some financial data, how do you push it down? If you've got information that's coming in at brand level, do you drive that down to SKU? And if so, what measure would you use to be the driver for that allocation? For sales, there are a few other considerations about how to handle the inherent delay between sales to a retailer and sales out to the consumer. So you may need to consider where there's potential for things like bulk buying and stock loading. Also, how do you then handle the evolution of your market? For example, if companies rationalize due to mergers and acquisitions, or if you enter into new business sectors, how do you ensure you're getting full coverage of your data? So far we've been talking about the challenges, so let's talk about some of the solutions. Depending on the scale of the data you're dealing with, you may be able to get by for a while using Excel and lookups to do your mapping, but more often than not, you will eventually run into some limitations using that. Before we entered lockdown, I ran some Power BI training for a company in Denmark, where they had attendees from across Scandinavia. Many of them were using Excel for the reporting of external data, and each month they would log on to the tool, make some selections to restrict the data volumes, dumping the data into Excel, go to a new sheet, doing different selections, downloading the tool, which was very time-consuming and very frustrating for them as they weren't actually adding value rather than just dumping the data down and trying to get it to a point where they could access it. So this is where self-service tools like Tableau Prep, Alteryx, and Power BI can come into their own. They've got very powerful data transformation engines, and they're driven by very user-friendly interfaces. You may need someone with good data modeling experience to set up your model and your data transformations, but once these solutions have been put in place, they're often then owned and maintained by the business users with a guide on how to load data in each month, how to handle the appearance of new products or customers, and how to do data quality checks to ensure all the required mappings are in place before they can then share your dashboards with other colleagues. And what was once a very tedious and manual process can now happen at the touch of a button. So I was just going to give you a little example and show you in Power BI how we could do some of the matching that we looked at earlier. So here I am in Power BI, and I've got two tables of data in here. So my Joe Blogs has got some friends now. So I've got my customer table where I've got my information, and I've got a separate table which has got scores from D and B. What I really want to do is in my customer table have the latest rating in here as well. I want to select my customer table, and I'm going to add in the rating from my D and B score table. Now the fact it's saying 79 for everything makes me think there's something wrong with my model, because it's just repeating what I can see down here as the average score for each of my customers. I'm just going to go into my data modeling tab, and I can see that actually they're not connected at all. That's why I'm seeing that repeating pattern. But I think we should be able to connect on name. So I'm just going to do that. I'm updating my model, and it's found a one-to-one relationship. That's good. I'm going to go back to my table, and I'm seeing a different result now. So I'm seeing that it's managed to find a match for Georgette, but it hasn't found a match for any of my other names. So it's just put them into a blank. I'm going to take my rating off for a second just so I can compare the name values. So Isaac, eyeballing it looks okay, but I think in actual fact there might be an extra space at the front. Ema and Irma, so there's a slight typing difference on that one. And we've got Joe Joseph and Will William. So that tells me I can't do a traditional join for my two data sets. I'm going to have to do a merge. So if I go into my data tool, and here's where I've loaded in my data, I'm going to go to my customer, and I'm going to add a merged query. So my customer table, and it's the name field I'm interested in. I'm going to go to my D&B score, choose my name field, and it's saying we're only going to find a match for one of these five, which was what we saw with the data modeling. There's an option here to use fuzzy matching. If I turn that on, it's now saying I can actually find 3 of 5, so that's a bit better. I'm going to hit OK on that, and I'm going to apply it. It goes away, and it looks at my model, creates the connections. And I realized I missed a step out, so I'm just going to go back into my transform data, go to my customer, go to my merge queries, and what I haven't told it is which fields I'd like to keep from this table, and all I really want is the rating. I'm going to apply that again. And now on my customer table, I've got a new field, which is the D&B score rating. So if I take that field and add it into my table, I can see that it's found the 3 matches where there were spaces or a slight typo, but it hasn't picked up my Joe and Will, because Joe and Joseph and Will and William are 2 different. So what I'm going to go back into my fuzzy matching. I'm going to go back to my managed queries, and there was a setting that I should have set. We go back in, there's some options in here, and there's an option to use a transformation table. So I've set up a table which says, got synonym, which has Joe as Joseph and Will as William. And it's now saying, yes, I'll be able to connect all 5 rows. Hit OK, say which fields I'm interested in, got our rating coming in, and I'm going to close and apply. And now all of 5 of my records got the correct score rating through, even though the names weren't quite exactly matching, but we managed to get through using the fuzzy lookup logic. There will come a point, depending on the volume of data you're dealing with, where the self-service tools may not be sufficient in terms of dealing with the size of that. So in that case, what you might do is move to the cloud and use something like Azure from Microsoft or Amazon Web Services in conjunction with a tool like Databricks, which allows you to perform lots of different manipulations of your data. So this is a point where it would be more of an IT or a third-party initiative, as we have quite a nice interface there with Power BI where it's point and click, whereas here it's much more roll your sleeves up and start getting coding. So any of your data transformations and analytics you will need to do will be coding using things like Spark, SQL, or Python. And then at the very end of it, that cleaned and transformed data will be made available for you to do reporting in your front-end tool. The benefits, obviously, of this is it's a much larger proposition. So it can handle vast quantities of data, and it can also ramp up the processing power as needed. So now we're at a point where we've got our data, we've got it mapped. The next thing we want to start doing is getting some insights from it. So for this next part of the demo, I'm going to be using some data from a manufacturer where we've got various metrics, but the key dimensions that we're looking at are products, channels, customer, region, and time. So generally when you get your data into this point, you want to start doing some exploration around it. And here we've created a dashboard to allow us to do some analysis of our performance. And you can see at the bottom here, we've got our information as well as competitor information that we've loaded in. The kind of thing we might want to be looking at is, what's our share growth, and what areas have we increased. So if I look here, I can see that there's been a 9% increase versus the previous year on growth. And I want to understand what's driving that growth. I've got a number of different attributes here. I've got categories, brands, pack sizes, channels. But where do you start? So with a dashboard, there's generally a number of filters and drill down. So I could start doing my analysis by pack, see what that gives me. Or maybe I want to pick a certain channel and then go drill into that from my brand level, which I can do a drill through report. And I can get some visualizations which quite quickly enable me to see where I've got an outlier. But if I was going to do that for every combination and permutation of attributes that I've got on my data, I'd be here for a month of Sundays. So being able to kind of highlight any exceptions and surface that without your analysts having to go and check every combination and permutation is going to be key. So some of the things just to consider in terms of as good as the dashboards are, they can't answer every question. So the time taken to do every combination will take quite a long time. You don't know whether you're going down a rabbit hole if you're trying to do some analyses. If it does look like there's something significant, is it really significant or is it just a minor blip? And because our brains as humans, we're trained to think a certain way, we're expecting things to behave a certain way, there might be insights and patterns that we've just missed or not thought about that could be picked up by an algorithm or a tool. So one of the reasons for kind of doing this is to empower users to get access to insights quickly. We don't want to spend hours and days trawling through data to find that key nugget. Once you start seeing those automated insights getting highlighted up, it gives you a point to start as opposed to an end point of analysis. The dashboard should be a big setup. The demo that we're going to do, we've tried to look at the different insights and put some context around it so it's very easy for the end user to understand what the points are. And also, rather than giving you every possible variance, we only show those which have got statistical significance and are worth basically investing your time investigating. We've done this using Azure, but you could also do it using AWS. The idea being that we take our sources, we combine them, we put that output for consumption using Power BI. And as part of the data cleansing, mapping, and transformations, there are a number of different transformations made on the data. One of the first things we do is run some clustering algorithms. And we do this to kind of generate some additional attributes on the data. So things like putting pack sizes into groups, price points as well. So areas where we see similar behaviors, and we can use that as part of our analysis. We then look at the trend at different levels to see if we're seeing consistent growth or a decrease for every combination of attributes for every KPI. Then some advanced techniques are used to uncover the real drivers of performance to ensure we're only highlighting things which are in fact significant. We look at those drivers and we see what could be causing any growth that we're seeing or any decrease. So that could be looking at any price increases, both from ourselves and competitors, or any indication of being promotional activity. Then we do more additional forecasting to look at the different emerging trends and highlights. And then based on the outputs that we find, we build up some textual explanations that basically takes all those number crunching and tries to make it in a much more understandable format for the end user. So let's go into Power BI and I'll show you some of those insights. So here we are just in our highlight screen, which is the top level market view. The data we're looking at here is a deodorant category, which you can see here, this has got a high level of seasonality, which I was surprised that I use deodorant every day, and I'm surprised people don't. And also the underlying trend is an increase. We've also just got the top 5 market leaders here as well. And by using the ribbon chart, we can see when people have changed position. So we can see that there was a rank change between these 2 items in November, December. On the right-hand side, we're highlighting some areas of interest that we think are interesting. So we've got outliers. So here's where the growth is exceeding what we would expect, or the decrease is worse than we would expect. And white spaces are where we find that there's actually an opportunity for us in a growth area where we're not selling any of our products. But also where we're selling products across the full plethora of channels and regions that we have available. The first one is going to go and look at these outliers. Okay, so here we've got some predetermined selections. We don't have every possible brand. We've only got the brands and combinations of channels and brands that are actually showing something significant. And you can see here for our brand Flavor of India, We've got an unexpected increase in volume sales, and from having done the root cause analysis, it looks like we're actually selling it in more shops, so we've increased the distribution in this month as opposed to previously. The other option on the highlights sheet is to look at those white spaces. And again, these are white spaces where either we don't have a product at all in the market, or we do have the product, but it's not taking the full breadth and width of our regions. So here we can see that we've got 30 potential areas which account for 9% of the market, where we don't have a competing product. I can have a look at some of these. So if I select a variant here, I can see on the right-hand side what the trend has been for that product. We've got a growth score here as well. And what this is a combination of 3, 6, and 12-month growth periods. So we can kind of very quickly see which areas are growing and which might be ones that would be interested in getting into. So this looks like it could be a relatively new product, launched with a slow launch early days, but it's now starting to pick up. Might be something we're interested in. Where we've got a product, but it's not in every channel or region, here we can see the various different products that are out there. We can see the growth scores, and we can see what the percentage share is. For this particular market, we can see it's high growth. And based on the fact that this competitor brand, the size and the product type, it's recommended that we launch this Thorogood product in retaliation and start trying to take some of that share. I can also choose to focus in on different lenses. We can look at either market, channel, or region. I'm just going to look at the market one today. So here we've kind of got a leaderboard of both share and growth. So I can see that the teal superstores is our share leader in channel. If I select that, my key insights are filtered just to teal, and it tells me very quickly I can see what's growing, what's decreasing. And if I want to look at one of these in a bit more detail, I can right-click, choose drill through, and it will go and give me the underlying details for that particular teal's superstore and that particular category. And it gives me then a performance summary of each of the products. It gives me, again, some kind of a textual information of what it's seeing as potential drivers, and where we're seeing competitors, or if it's a competitor, which of our products we should be selling in. So it's trying to save you that hassle of kind of going through every combination and permutation of potential things, surfacing where there's a statistical element to it, and giving you those insights to start doing further analyses and identifying growth opportunities. So that was just a very quick demo of some of the features that you can start using analytics to start driving up into your business and making those insights a lot more visible. So just to summarize, I think there's a lot of benefit from just even analyzing some of the external data on its own. You can get some really good insights and additional information, especially around competitors, about share, about credit risk, about areas of your portfolio you might want to pay more attention to. But by combining it together with internal data or other external data, I think you get a lot more power from it, and hopefully showing that example of how you can use the fuzzy lookup to get that data into good shape was useful. Once we've got the data together, we want to start doing some exploration. So we can start answering those business questions. So which channels is my share growing and what's driving it? Where am I increasing risk in my portfolio? But as a human, again, there is only a limited amount of analyses that we can do. And leveraging the power of AI and using automated analytics, you can direct the human being to find the interesting and out-of-the-ordinary events and patterns, and they can take that as their starting point. And the benefit of having the computer do the heavy lifting as well is that once the system is automated, then the machine can handle more data at a greater frequency, so you can start to increase the granularity of the data you're dealing with, increase the frequency of the refresh, and you get a lot more insights into your data. So just to end off, thank you very much for your time today. My contact details are on the screen, so if you do have any further questions, please feel free to reach out to me, and enjoy the rest of your day.